All right, the time is 6 o'clock. I will now call to order this meeting of the Winooski City Council. We'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Deputy Mayor Brenda Oakleaf.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All right, we'll move on to agenda review. Council, any issues, concerns, topics on today's agenda? No? Okay.
No.
All right, on to public comment. So this time is reserved for comments and questions on topics that are not included in today's agenda. So if you are here for something that is in today's agenda, I'll just have you wait for that item and we will discuss it then and have public comment at that time. So that said, if there's anybody who has public comment, I would invite you, if you're in the room, to come up to the table, and if you are on Zoom, to raise your hand. All right, not seeing anyone in the room or on Zoom for public comment. So we will move to our consent agenda. Today's consent agenda, we have approval for Liquor Control Board meeting minutes of January 5th, approval of a payroll warrant for December 21st to January 3rd, approval of accounts payable warrant January 8th, approval of community services grant application approval, an approval of community services fundraising initiatives, an approval for resolutions setting fees for the Thrive program, approval for the Finance Commission appointment, and approval for TD Bank Cash Management Master Agreement. Council, any concerns on any of these items?
For the Finance Commission appointment?
Yes.
Given the applicants in the room?
Yep.
Want to remove that?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's make it the
Item A? Regular?
first item of regular items. Yep.
Okay.
Everyone good with that?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So I'll seek a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing the item G and making that the first regular item.
So moved. Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wonderful. That moves forward. Council reports. Aurora, let's start with you.
I don't have anything to report.
Oh, there we go.
Infrastructure Commission will be meeting this Thursday. The notification for the agenda is probably posted on the city website. It might be going out on Front Porch Forum. I'm not sure what the latest is on all that. But we will be meeting here in City Hall instead of at the community room in the pool. And we should have some external presenters too.
Nice. Let's see.
The Housing Commission will next meet on Tuesday, January 27th, here at City Hall.
Awesome.
We have a Safe, Healthy, and Connected People Commission meeting tomorrow night. I misspoke last week and wanted to alert everyone that we're meeting jointly with the Library Committee, and we will have a presentation from the architects who are doing the design work for the O'Brien Center and the Library Renovation Project.
Nice.
So that meeting, I misspoke, will not be happening at the Myers Community Pool. It will be happening at the Winooski Memorial Library at 32 Mallets Bay Avenue. It will be from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. and there will also be a hybrid option available.
Nice. Will you send those drawings onto council once you get them after the meeting?
100%, yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Planning Commission continued what has been their lengthy discussion over gentle infill and ADUs that I've referenced the past 3 times, I think now. They also came to agreements on the rules for outdoor signage at businesses. And then they started to discuss, or they were briefed on an interesting project through the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. It's a building typographies project that is funded with some federal funds that CCRP wants to use by June. And essentially it kind of lays out what buildings are allowable and what they would look like per our current code, so that people can actually see a visual of what that building would look like in existing neighborhoods. So really exciting, especially as it comes with federal funds, because I think it would be quite expensive to do if it was something that we were to explore. And they will continue and wrap up, I believe, those discussions on gentle infill and ADUs at our next meeting. Elaine, city updates.
All right, the fiscal year 2027 budget process continues tonight. Please stick around for the Community Services Department presentation. You can learn more about the library, senior center, recreation and parks, Thrive out-of-school programming, the pool, and more. For full budget details, you can visit winooskivt.gov/FY27. If you have questions about the proposed budget, please email them to budget@winooskivt.gov. Interested in running for Winooski City Council or Winooski School District Board of Trustees? Many terms are up for election, including mayor, 3 city council seats, a Winooski School District treasurer, and 3 school district board trustee seats. Residents must file a consent of candidate form and petition with a minimum of 30 signatures. More are encouraged in case any of them are so-called defective, by 5 p.m. on Monday, January 26, 2026. You can visit the news update section of winooskivt.gov to download your paperwork and to learn more, or visit the city clerk's office Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., or you can call us at 802-655-6410.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so we will move on to our regular items with our new regular item A, Finance Commission appointment. Angela, are you online? Yes. And then Logan, you can.
I
come up
am.
to it.
As council knows, the Finance Commission has had a number of vacancies, and we received an application from someone who had actually applied to fill in one of the interim seats on City Council, so has gone through some pretty extensive interviewing. I met with Logan previously to discuss the commission and see if it was something that he was interested in, and he was ready to go. So I believe he must be there tonight, and would love to invite him to introduce himself.
Awesome, thank you, Angela. Yes, he is here.
Hi, good evening. My name is Logan Devaney. I have been a Winooski resident for about 5 years now. I have a background in federal grant management, residential real estate financing, and lending. And I'm really excited to invest some of my time into the city and some of the things that we really prioritize in making this a great community.
Awesome, thank you, Logan. And as Angela said, yeah, we were all, those of us who got to do the interviewing for that process, so impressed by Logan's interviews, and it just seemed like a perfect fit for finance as we were learning more about your experience and everything you've done. So I know I was very excited to see that you had applied to the Finance Commission. Angela probably was too, because we've got some vacancies there. But I don't have any questions for you, but just thank you for applying. I was excited to see that.
Yeah, thank you all for the opportunity as well.
Council, if you have any comments or questions?
Just thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for applying.
I move to appoint the proposed commissioner as recommended for a term expiring June 30th, 2027.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Logan. You're all set. You're welcome to stay, but you're also free to go home too. Okay. So on to our new item B, discussion approval, Winooski Valley Parks District presentation and budget ask.
Sorry, you're over there.
Over there. I thought I heard it.
And just to be clear, I shouldn't have worn that as approval. It's just discussion.
Okay, I thought.
Hi, thanks for your time tonight. Appreciate it. And I understand you do have the materials that we submitted, so that we can refer to them, including our new annual report format. We'd love any kind of feedback on it. We're pretty thrilled about it. And we've managed to take a lot of information, put it into 2 pages that's highly readable, so hopefully that's helpful to our cause. This year in particular, as you know, there's been a lot of activity about Memorial Park, and in fact, a recent meeting that was just really spectacular. There's a grant that the Friends of Winooski have been utilizing to help us move the process forward, and I just thought that we've had 2 excellent meetings on it. For some context, Memorial Park is a property that's owned by the city. Winooski Valley Park District has been working with the city over the last few years on a bunch of different levels, administrative, financial, site investigation. We've done a bunch of volunteer days down there. We've done trail building, we've done a lot of things. And the whole context is we're all trying to figure out what the best next step is in terms of management and ownership of that parcel. The reason I bring it up tonight is I think at the last meeting we had very recently about this site, the Park District is going to, I talked to our superintendent, so he's aware of this now, I said without his presence, but we just feel that in order for us to get a better grasp of the property and the opportunities, we've got to do some upgrades. And those upgrades can be done before we make those decisions. And two things in particular really jumped out. One is the amount of non-native species that are down there. It's pretty much overrun. We've got an excellent report that was done by Red Start that actually lays out a plan for doing mitigation down there. So we felt, well, there was a low-hanging fruit that we can go out and collectively get some resources to take on. And the other is there's a large ravine. I don't know if you walk down there, but as you walk towards Colchester, basically you just go over the Colchester line onto CHT property, and it's a massive ravine that is getting larger and more eroded by the day. And we're already wired in with CCRPC on a couple of water quality projects. And so I just felt, as we're in this meeting and this whole process has become broader and there's a lot more smart people at the table and a lot more sort of community around the parcel, we felt as if it'd be a great idea if we just went forward and talked to CCRPC and see if we can get some kind of funding through them or another source to take on that building. It's getting really bad. And that will also help us cement the relationship with CHT. They've already shown a lot of support around this because they own a parcel that is directly adjacent to Memorial Park, and without their parcel, the whole area doesn't even make sense. But they are interested in erosion control on that slope and providing safe access for people on Morehouse Drive at the housing complex there. And we've already had a lot of conversations about the difficulty of access and the lack of knowledge of that parcel. So I'm bringing that up because I feel like we have a very tangible, clear next step on this in a way that we haven't for a while. So we're going to be very proactive on that in the next few months, trying to get some resources together for those two particular projects. More broadly speaking, for those who are less familiar with us, we're essentially a hybrid municipality and nonprofit. We have 8 municipalities, including you, that send trustees and supervise our staff. We have full-time staff of 3. Currently, we have 18 parcels. We have several other parcels that have the strong potential to become part of our system as well. So I just want to open up to any questions or discussion.
Well, thank you very much. For Council's awareness, I've been a part of the meetings that you were referencing, and it has been nice to be able to talk this out a little bit in longer sessions than just when you've come before Council in the past, and to really look at Memorial and start those really good conversations again about where that's going to go, and if we're going to have one of your parks managed in our city or not. Elsie and Al, as you haven't been here for their previous presentations, I do want to just allow the two of you any time to start if you'd like to ask questions more about the work that they do, if you have anything.
I don't have any questions at this time. I was at the last Memorial Park meeting, and I've done I'm not going to say extensive, but I've done some research on my own, so I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay.
I similarly don't have any questions at this time.
I have a comment. Thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
Lovely new annual report, so
That's
great
nice.
work on that. One thing that you may already know about, but just to state it again, The municipalities that are part of the Chittenden Solid Waste District have annual community cleanup fund
Yes.
that they can access. Many of them are underutilized. Ours, unfortunately, are almost always. I try hard to get more allocation for our small little city, but I would suggest for the communities where you have managed parks, reaching out to the commissioner, who's the representative for the board there, and seeing, the allocation amount that you have for FY27 is like 3,200 and change. I would think that the municipalities that you have actively managed parks in, that it would be a clear opportunity to work with them. It's based on, and those funds are reimbursement, so you just need to make sure you have your invoices, and the request needs to be submitted by the CSWD commissioner. Probably for timing, you might want to aim for like late May, very early June. But if that's not something that you've already looked into, I would highly recommend that.
We've had funding from, I don't know if it's through that particular program, but most recently we had actually an electric bike catch on fire, and we had to remove the foam, the PFAS foam that they used to, and so we had to remove that, and they actually gave us a small grant to dispose of it.
Gotcha.
And Tim's
Yeah.
used them a couple times, but those for like, $500,000.
Mhm. These are annual cleanup funds
Yeah.
that are replenished each year, so,
Let's check into that.
yeah.
Thank
And each community, it's kind of a per capita funding allocation amount, so the other municipalities you work with will probably have a larger budget than we do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
handy with some of the projects that we might need to do at memorials and so get.
Yeah. And it's waste cleanup as well as prevention work, so it's a pretty broad grant funding opportunity there. And again, it's primarily reimbursement, so it helps to get approval ahead of time, but it's not necessarily a requirement.
That's great.
Yep. Yep.
Thanks.
Sure.
I actually want to ask one additional question to these potential projects that you mentioned. I assume with the ravine in particular, thinking about how one of the things we've talked about in the past is a significant archaeological site. So I assume that would be part of thinking about how we're handling the ravine?
Absolutely, that's a great point. I mean, this area is one of the most archaeologically rich areas in the whole Northeast.
Yeah.
So yes, certainly I'm certain that there would be clearance required, and we may have to get some new field to run through it. But yeah, absolutely.
That'd be part of it, okay.
And a benefit to doing those projects that would minimize the erosion would be protection of anything that's archaeologically sensitive, under the soils right now that could potentially be disturbed and exposed because of continued erosion of that area. So it would be a benefit, but yeah, something that we will keep in mind as part of the process.
Wonderful.
I'm not sure if you had seen the cover sheet on this, but our current presentation from our city manager does have a suggested contribution amount that is less than what you were asking for today. Just so council is aware, just wondering, would Winooski residents notice a difference if we were to go from the city manager's budget ask to your budget ask?
It's a difference of $12,000 or $13,000. Yeah. I mean, it's impactful. To be blunt, we sort of built in the loss already into our expectations for this coming year. We always are pessimistic about revenue and optimistic about expenditure. It's a balance. So you've probably run things before. What I'm supposed to say is it's horrible and you guys should pay the full thing, but we have a relationship that's built over the last decade, which has started when I first started this job. You guys were at 0, and I didn't really understand why. I went to a couple budget presentations, and I said, now I understand. So I really do understand the fiscal restraints, and I'm personally appreciative of what you guys are providing us. The other towns might say, how come we have to pay the full boat? And they don't. It's an annual conversation, but I feel the spirit and practicality of what we've been doing over the last few years works. And I'm particularly thrilled about this grant and our gathering on the board, because we were all feeling a little stuck about 6 months ago. Wait, who's on first? You know, it was one of those, not a standoff, but it was literally. So I do feel like we're in a whole different world now in terms of our ability to move forward, and that's why we're proposing to these projects. Because in my experience, you do something on the ground, makes a lot of other things slip out of it. So we gather down and we do things, we build conversation.
I appreciate that honesty. Thank you.
The only other comment I would add, thank you for some of that context. As you look ahead to events and volunteer opportunities, I would request that you try to balance some things that are during the traditional workday during the week with some weekend or early, mid-after, like some 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock volunteer opportunities. I don't know how the participation rate was for some of the volunteer events this past year, but the weekend event I attended probably 2 falls ago, November 24 at this point, was very well attended. And it wasn't like a sunny day that was warm or anything, you know, it was chilly and it was on a weekend. So just kind of keeping in mind if there's ability to balance between volunteer events that are, you know, between the 9 to 5 hours, Monday through Friday, and something that might be after those hours or on a weekend, that would be helpful.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
All right. Wonderful. Agenda. We will move on to our next item here, which is discussion over the fiscal year 2026-2027 proposed budget for community services. Ray is walking over to the mic.
Right. Give me just a moment. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully, so I don't have to boss Paul around for the next little bit. There we go. Perfect. All right. Excellent. Well, thanks as always. Oh, actually, do you mind handing me that charger just so I don't have a mid-presentation accident? No, you're good. Thank you as always for the opportunity to be up here and present. I think a lot of people ask if this is a really stressful and terrifying moment, and I love being able to brag about the work we do and the great team that I manage. And answer good questions. So really excited to be here tonight to present the community services budget for fiscal year 27. Quick overview of how I'm hoping we'll go through. Certainly we can tangent and diverge if need be, but I want to do a quick overview of the department, sort of the who of our department, and a little bit of what we've been up to this past year. Get into obviously the budget presentation itself, look ahead to some priorities for the remainder of this fiscal year and next, and then talk about the very salacious community garden budget, which you probably saw in your packet. It's our one non-general fund budget that remains. So it's about $3,000. So we'll save that for the end. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in. And I feel like I say this every year. This team of human beings does an incredible amount of fabulous work in this community every year on behalf of our neighbors. I feel really honored and privileged to be able to be at the helm of this department and feel really great about the team that we have right now. The work that we manage within community service is more or less split into 4 buckets. This is kind of the way we've thought about it now for a number of years. So we have our Thrive After School program, which is our licensed after school program Runs during the school year from 3 to 5:30 every day, and then we do 6 to 7 weeks of, sorry, I have to do that for my children, 6 to 7 weeks of summer camp, full day. Recreation in parks, for folks that are into a sports metaphor, I have always viewed as our center fielder that's covering the spaces in between all these other buckets, but that's both a blessing and a curse, I think, for them. Really exciting, lots of things going on, but also really exciting and lots of things going on. So that includes our recreational programming, so think youth soccer, youth basketball, also the pool, so that's a huge lift for us in the summer. And you'll see the staffing here, both pool supervisors and lifeguards, but also our swim team, which I'll talk a little bit about down the road. And then, again, other places where we've got opportunities to plug in different types of programming for not only youth, but adults as well. Library, fairly straightforward what a library is, but library director and supported there by a team of 4 regular staff and then some substitutes as well. That come in to help out when folks are out. It's a pretty small team. I think as one counselor here can attest, it's a pretty thin margin, so it's really nice to have those subs on board to cover when we've got people on vacation or out sick. And then last but not least, our senior programs manager, so Barb, runs the senior center for us. She is the lone part-time person sort of in this management band for us. And as you can see there, that is a mighty team of 1. We have a huge volunteer corps there that's really helpful and supportive, but staff-wise, she is it down there at a part-time position. And then myself and Amanda, our admin and outreach coordinator, are kind of working across the department to support all those functions. One thing I do want to note, you'll see 2 of those blocks are in yellow. Reason being is in your roll-up budget, you're not going to see a difference, but if you dive into the detail budget, one thing we're proposing to do in this coming year is actually take our Thrive part-time staff and our Rec part-time position and pool those. One funky thing we've got is that in our payroll system, it's challenging for us to bill the same person to multiple line items in a paycheck, but we are often finding that we're using, for instance, Thrive staff to help run a summer camp a week that Thrive's not operating. So by pooling those those hours into one line item, it's actually going to give us, I think, a lot of flexibility to move pieces around the board. I think it's going to improve programming for us in that we're going to have more consistent staff that have been here for a longer period of time. And I think with a rec position, it was at most 10 hours a week. And so we were finding filling it and retaining somebody in that role was very challenging. So I'm excited about this. I wanted to highlight it though, operationally, that the amount being kind of allocated to the different functions is going to remain more or less the same. But when you look at the detailed budget, those are now sitting under an admin, the 50 budget for community services versus in the Thrive budget and in the rec budget.
Do you want me to hold questions until later?
If you have a question on that, I'm happy to take them as we go.
It may fit in for a later question, so just let me know. I noticed the interest in moving to a 3rd star.
Yes.
So will adjusting how you track hours impact the ability to get that 3rd star?
No, and I think if anything, it will, having to get the 3rd star comes with some requirements around staff training and professional development, which we don't have currently on the rec side. So I actually think if anything, it's going to make the staff that we have functioning across services better, if that makes sense. So yeah, it shouldn't impact anything on the stars side.
Okay, just thinking down the road of not wanting to.
Yep. No, we'll be aiming for that stars sort of requirement, the credentialing requirement there, which is a higher level of the 2.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and so for folks that don't know, STARS is a quality assessment that the state does of childcare programs, and if you meet certain benchmarks, you actually get increased reimbursement from the state for kids that are drawing state subsidy. So it's an incentive to have a higher quality program. So thank you.
The number range
For
the stars, how many stars?
it's 1 through 5. So any license, and this is a shift in recent years, any licensed program is now considered a 1-star program. So if you do nothing else other than fill out the basic paperwork to become licensed, you're at 1 star. And then there's steps that move up from there.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Also just want to say too, and it's probably fairly clear, and we'll get to this a little bit when you see the department breakdown, but our humans are our hugest asset in terms of the work that we do. And we'll see that split out more, but we really cannot do what we do without the people pictured here. So just want to, again, give them kudos for everything they do. All right. So it's been a good couple years. We've had some really exciting outcomes. Coming out of COVID, we received a pretty significant windfall of federal funding through the generosity of this community, have been able to carry a lot of that additional work forward. And it's really exciting for us to be continuing that momentum and seeing really good successes along the way. So just some highlights from this past fiscal year that I wanted to call out. Certainly the ongoing work with the Champlain Housing Trust around the O'Brien Center project. Still, I think not necessarily a lot of things that folks are seeing on the ground day to day, but we have transferred management of the building over to them. We've been doing a significant amount of grant seeking, fundraising work. As will folks that come to tomorrow's meeting will find out, a lot of work on the design side of things, which is really exciting. Not having been here when the O'Brien Center in its current iteration was designed, I'm excited to know that any of the problems are going to be my fault moving forward in the way that the building is laid out. And I think we've been really intentional and thoughtful about how the building is going to work for what it's supposed to do. So a lot of work happening there, which is exciting. Folks probably remember we were able to move the greenhouse as part of that up to Landry Park in a partnership with the Vermont Garden Network. So that was really exciting. Our Winooski Wave swim team won Division II state championship 2 years ago and was a runner-up last year. I will say as a swim team parent, I have a lot of pride in that as well. But really cool to see that team is now at 90 swimmers, which is the biggest it's ever been. And quite honestly, the pool is packed. We're even talking about potentially moving some age groups to different times of the day to make space. Also really exciting that we are most certainly the most ethnically diverse, racially diverse group in the swim league. We're drawing kids from other communities that are seeking that out in a team environment. So that's really
awesome.
Kudos to the team and the coaches and the director there for making that happen. And then a couple just personal accolades. Speaking of the director, Jackson Callanan, who's been the coach of this team for years, received the Alan B. Cummings Award in 2024, which is really the Champlain Valley Swim League's highest honor. Really exciting. He got that while we were hosting leagues, which was a fairly stressful event for us. We had about 2,500 people through the pool in a weekend. So it was kind of wild, but we did it. Maruna Mirsan, our rec assistant, this most recent year was awarded the Young Professional Award at the Vermont Rec and Parks Conference. And then I have had, my arm was twisted hard enough to be serving right now as the chair of the exec committee for the Vermont Rec and Parks Association these past 2 years. So that's been really cool to have us as staff, I think, kind of out in a leadership role on the state level and getting accolade for that. A couple more programmatic pieces just to highlight. So in fiscal year 25, we ran 442 unique programs across those 4 buckets. Quite honestly, I think that's an underestimate. I think there are things that we are doing that in some ways are not being captured in the data that we have. We are working on that. I'd say it's a work in progress, but I think that number, if anything, is a conservative estimate. Really happy to report again, like I did last year, that we are over 90% full when we have registration-based programs that are going out for folks to sign up for. So really telling us that what we're doing is landing, people are excited. And I also just in this arena want to say, we have really made a priority of equitable access in the way that we are going out and seeking enrollment and supporting enrollment. So that number is not just because we're running cool programs. That's because we're knocking on doors at Elm Street and Robin is running the halls at the school with paper forms every morning. And we are really working hard to make sure that we're getting families and kiddos and participants signed up. So I just want to give kudos to the team for the hard work on that. Couple other pieces here. We awarded in fiscal year 25 about $16,000 in scholarships across our fee-based programming. Certainly the lion's share of that was at the pool, but really proud to be doing that and making sure again that we're kind of eliminating barriers as much as possible for access. served about a little over 3,000 meals at the senior center in fiscal year 25 between those various food programs. I will say, and I'll get to this a little bit down the road, this area at the federal level is something we are watching very closely. And you'll see we do have some departmental reserves that we are holding. And this is an area where I'm sort of waiting for the bottom to fall out at any moment. So I feel like we have some good backstop if things change on a dime. But clearly this is an important service, especially for our senior community. And then this data point, I think, was an interesting one to me. Again, I think it's a little bit underrepresentative of what we're seeing in terms of return use, but folks are signing up for multiple things when they're engaging with us, which I think is a really good sign. And quite honestly, is the vision for community services. I want to see people when they're learning to swim at age 6 and playing soccer at age 12 and coming to check out a book in the library at age 25 and coming back to the senior center at age 50 for a program, right? Like, we want to see folks across the spectrum of their life and be relevant. And I think that this number to me is saying we're getting there. And again, this doesn't include library patrons. This doesn't include folks that visit our parks. This is just based on data we have in our recreation system for sign-up program. So I think pretty exciting to see. I'm gonna pause here.
Yeah, I was curious if there was anybody that was turned away from a scholarship that needed one.
No, so the reasons that we would not award a scholarship, so at the pool, we only do scholarships for residents. So that's an area where we have a limitation on residency. For most of our other programs, we don't have a residency requirement for a few reasons. One, we have a lot of folks that are moving between communities from a living situation. I think the number, I don't know if this is still the same number, but at one point, the turnover at the school annually in their census was about 30%. So that means 1 out of every 3 kids year to year is moving in and out of the district. So we have a lot of families that are very much part of this community, but may not physically live here. So yeah, so it's really at the pool that we limit. The only other time that we typically do say we are not able to do a scholarship is if you have an outstanding balance with the city. With that said, we work really hard to get folks on a payment plan. I mean, we have folks on plans as low as $5 a payment per month. We're really trying to meet people where they are and make sure that the financing is not what keeps them out of programs.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And I'll say one more word on that too. One thing that we do that's, I think, fairly unique in this world is, as we're thinking about scholarship, we're not looking at a pool of money that's sitting in an account somewhere. We're considering it as foregone revenue. So essentially, when we're building our revenue budgets, we're intentionally deflating those to accommodate for the provision of scholarships. A lot of other communities have a bucket over here that they're pulling out of, and once the bucket is empty, tough noogies. This gives us some flexibility to say, as long as we're hitting our revenue targets, we have a lot of flexibility to award scholarships, which I think is a really good way to do it in terms of access. Obviously, it puts some budgetary pressure on, and I think that's understood and appreciated, but I think it's allowed us to be really flexible in how we award scholarships.
Thanks, Ray.
Yeah. Any questions on these slides so far? Quick little bit on the pool. This graph was in the budget book that went out to the community, but thought was really interesting and nice to see the progression of use of the pool. So certainly we've grown. It is impossible for me to believe that it's been 5 years since we opened this pool.
It was fast, wasn't it?
I have to renew my pool operator certification this year, and I was like, what? It's great. It's a 5-year cert. So anyway, really exciting that we're here 5 years in, and nice to see that we're continuing to grow. I was struck by the day pass use staying pretty steady over time, but it's nice to see that we're having folks really get and use season passes. Quick math that I did, the average kind of cost per check-in for a season pass was about $3.88, which is well below a day pass. So really nice that folks are getting value for that across the board. It's not like, I think, the typical gym membership, right, that everybody buys in January and then doesn't use. People are actually like using it, which is very cool. And then just, I know Brendan, you often like to see just the usage or the opening.
yeah.
So we had 2 days last year that we were fully closed for inclement
It's
weather.
unreal.
Yeah, it was a really nice summer.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there are any pool questions, but if not, we'll keep chugging.
Been seeing similar rates of like folks getting their, is it,
Oh, the swim test.
yeah.
Yep, it's been right around 1,000 or a little more every summer, different kids
Wow.
that get that swim test. It's really, like, truly become sort of a rite of passage in the community. It's very cool every summer, especially towards the beginning, to have kids just like sprinting in off the pool deck, which they shouldn't be doing. But, holding their little thing that they have to give to the front desk saying they passed. Really fun when you've got that kid that day one jumps in and sinks like a rock, and then by the end of the summer is swimming, confidently in the pool. So we see that every season, and it's really exciting to see.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jumping off of that question, do you have adult learn to swim?
We have had usually 1 or 2 sessions of adult swim lessons, and I think with admittedly varying degrees of success. I think attendance has been somewhat sparse at times. We have certainly worked to really recruit from non-English speaking communities, which I think is great. And I think often folks in those communities are juggling a lot. And so I think getting people out for an optional swim lesson sometimes can be challenging.
Yeah.
But the demand hasn't been massive, I will say.
Yeah.
But we do definitely, one of the ways we're recruiting folks into that is, and I give Robin a ton of credit, at the pool, if we see a family there with 4 kids in the water and mom or dad sitting on the side of the pool with their feet dangling in, we'll go up and have a conversation and say, hey, do you know how to swim? Would you be interested in swim lessons? So really trying to make sure that as those kids are learning that skill and gaining that confidence, that mom or dad can as well, so that they can be involved.
Yeah.
And then one comment, I know some folks that really enjoy the lap swimming.
Yes.
And so I don't know if there's, my impression is that that is also in high demand.
It is, and I'm not a lap swimmer, so if there are other lap swimmers in the room, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we are fortunate in that it is not common to have to share a lane at our pool, which I think in a lot of other lap swimming environments, that is very much the norm. You're 2 to 3 people to a lane at any given time. So I think it's popular, but I think there's some room to grow it. And we, Robin and I were just meeting about this last week. There's just only so many hours of daylight that we are trying to jam a lot of things into. And I think in an effort to be honoring the tax commitment that this community has made, we've really tried to lean into open swim and make that take the bulk of our, kind of daily calendar. So we did, I think we're doing right now 2 hours of lap swim in the morning, so 7:30 to 9:30, and that seems to be a pretty good window. We've waffled on going back to a 7 o'clock start, but I think getting staff there prior to 7 a.m. is an
Come on.
adventure. I mean, love my staff, but they're all 18 to 20-something years old, and sometimes that is not their
I
finest.
guess, I was on the crew team and
Yes.
we
Oh,
were
yeah.
up at 5, so.
Yep. Same. I did a semester of that as well. Yeah. So I think we certainly can look at it. I will say that is not an area where we've felt a particular pinch point yet in terms of
Okay,
needing to
great.
expand. So.
I just really, the point of that was to relay that.
Yep.
Feedback is positive, and
Yep.
it seems like folks enjoyed that opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed. Quick anecdote, sorry, guilty of this, but the first summer I was working at the pool, I was covering that morning shift at the desk pretty frequently, and there was a guy who was there pretty much every day for a lap swim, and at the end of the summer he came up to me and he said, "This pool saved my life." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "I was at home, sedentary, gaining weight, wasn't like moving my body, and I came out for one lap swim," and he was there, I think, probably 90% of the days we were open. So I think that's a pretty telling story, and I think echoes what you're saying. So, I see Robin's hand is up. Paul, do you want to?
Sorry to interrupt, but just something, Ray, thank you for presenting that, and Brent for your question. Also with the lab swim, during open swim time, we do try to keep it multi-use as well, and we do keep 2 lanes available for lab swimmers who might come in during the day.
Yep.
Okay, great. I don't think I knew that, so thanks for
Yep.
pointing that out.
Sure.
All right.
Ray, I know, so moving to 7, I know that's difficult, but has there been any thought into trying to extend further into the evenings? I know just the constant, I don't want to say complaint, but
Yep.
a lot of folks who are working till 5 just can't get to the pool, and they would love to, especially on those like super
Yeah.
hot days.
So we did add, in response to that feedback 2 years ago,
Yeah.
last summer we did add 2 nights a week that we stay open later.
Oh,
I want
okay.
to say, Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say it was Thursdays and Saturdays, which is great. I think that was a good way to sort of accommodate.
Yeah.
One thing we are up against, especially later in the season, is daylight.
Yeah.
And it starts to become, just from a lifeguarding perspective, you know, as it gets dusky, it's not a lit pool, there's no lighting on the pool deck. So I think from a safety perspective,
Yeah.
it starts to become difficult as well. So we have talked to the lifeguard team about more evening hours, and I think especially later in the summer,
Yeah.
there's been some reluctance to really push that too much for that very reason.
Yeah, and I could totally see, you know, maybe you would just do more days during the brighter summer hours and not extend it further as as
Yep.
it does start to get darker sooner. But
Yeah, well, I will say Robin and I are meeting next week to go over pool schedule, and we're launching pool pass sales February 1. So we will be finalizing all these details. So this is timely feedback. So definitely something we can try to consider.
thank you.
Cool. All right. Library. I can't say enough about the 4 people that work down there and what they're able to accomplish in our little 1,800 square foot shoebox. There is so much magic that comes out of that little square or rectangle that I'm super proud of. I will say this past year for the library was pretty rugged. We had multiple staff out on unexpected leave, long-term leave, and when you have a team of 4, that hits pretty hard. Folks may remember we were actually out of our normal space for almost 3 months while we were dealing with some environmental remediation issues related to the kind of impending project.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was interesting as we were looking through the data year over year, visits were down, circulation was down for those reasons. I think we suffered those 3 months that we were kind of in the other space, and it took a little while to rebound. With that said, really, you know, consistent library card holder numbers, consistent new card holders, great growth on the electronic circulation side of things. That number has continued to climb year over year over year. So, you know, all things considered, I think it was a really strong year for the team. And what's been exciting too is looking at the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we very much have rebounded and are right on par with the year prior. So I think we've bounced back. I think people have found their way back to us. I think continuing to do a lot of programming there and have really strong attendance and participation. So I think it's some good foreshadowing for our new space in a little bit of time when that opens.
Ray, for the new card signups, do you find that is folks who are brand new to Winooski or people who have lived here and are just finding out about the library?
I may, I know Nate is on here, and I may, if it's all right, defer that question to
Yeah.
him.
Hey Thomas, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, thanks for the question. It's a mix, honestly. There are definitely a lot of new residents who are signing up for cards, but also we get folks who come in and they're just like, I remember when the library was in the mill. How long have you been here? Let me get my card. You know, so it's really, it's kind of a mix. It's not something that we do track, other than the gross number of how many new cards we do issue.
Fair enough. Thank you.
And then I think moving from the more local data to just some comparative stuff at the state level, and got a question prior. So every year, Vermont Department of Libraries does an annual survey of libraries and compiles all the data. So they gather it between January and March and compile that data and have then sort of a statewide data set where you can look at how your library stacks up against other libraries throughout the state, libraries of different sizes. So we tend to look at the bucket of libraries serving populations of 5,000 or more, just because we do tend to be more urban adjacent. I'm reluctant to call us urban, but I think similar to those communities, and these are kind of more our peer libraries, I think, in terms of the work we're doing. And as you can see here, and this is not in any way a shot at anybody, it's just what it is. Our per capita staff hours is the lowest, our hours of open hours per week, second lowest, smallest square footage, sixth lowest local tax funding contribution, and second lowest total. So that includes folks that have an outside funding source or a friends group or something. Smallest physical collection, and second lowest total items circulated. And I think takeaway there is if you don't have a lot of stuff, you can't circulate a lot of stuff. I don't think that's reflective. What's interesting is as you look at some of the other more kind of usage related data, we tend to fall more in the middle of that list of 33. So borrowers per capita, circulation per visit, total programs offered, program attendance per capita, we're more in the sort of 10 to 20 range in those categories. So I think what that's telling me is that we are in a lot of ways punching above our weight class in terms of the outcomes we're getting from the resources that are going in. And, I put this little teaser photo here really to say it's super exciting that the community and CHT and everybody is on board for this new library renovation that I think is going to be pretty revolutionary for us. Looking at roughly 3 times the square footage that we currently have, about a 64% increase in linear footage of shelving, and just frankly a much more functional space in terms of the way it's laid out and what it's going to let us do. So very excited for that project, and I think it's going to start to really address a lot of these issues as we get settled into a new space in the coming years. So I'll pause here. There's a lot of data. So
yeah, and I want to thank you for providing some additional background on where the data is sourced from.
Yep.
And then it may help to just note that this is reflective of FY24
yes,
data, because I believe in FY25 there was a budget approval for part-time circulation, and so that was part of the reason why I was wondering, like, is this capturing some of FY or even like the first 2 quarters of FY25?
Yeah, no, it's as you'll see in that report, the libraries kind of self-select and self-report what the bounds of their reporting period are. So most libraries in there, not all, but most are reporting on a July to June fiscal year like we do.
Yep.
Others are January through December. So this does not include the increase of that additional part-time clerk.
Okay.
With that said, that's 12 to 14 hours. So while appreciated and great, not going to put us at the top of the heap. And
I wouldn't imagine. But in terms of
I think a good question.
Data comparison before
Exactly.
and after.
Yeah, so I think as we look at next year's data set for fiscal year 25, we may move up a smidge.
So it's about a year lag.
It's about a year behind.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's not uncommon.
Yeah, no, it's a good question though.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
One other thing, and I just kind of get to that question too. One other thing in looking at that jump, the budget jump year over year to fiscal year 25, the other thing that got shifted into the library budget was essentially the lease cost for renting the library back from CHT. So it's a big add in the library budget, but to the overall general fund budget, it's net neutral because that number is the same as what we were basically losing on the O'Brien Center operations prior. Just not to sugarcoat it, we were subsidizing the operations of that building to the tune of about $96,000 annually, and as we became tenants of CHT, we're able to negotiate with them to say our lease will not exceed that loss. So again, it looks like a big jump on the library budget, but it's not an add to the total budget, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Yep.
I'm wondering, excuse me, I'm wondering if you have any data or anecdotal information about benefits of the home card system. So either people coming into our city because we have a small but mighty collection that might be more unique than other communities, or benefits that our citizens are getting from other libraries.
That is a great question, and I am again going to put Nate on the spot.
Sorry, Nate.
Oh, does he know he's muted?
He might not know. Oh, mute Luke.
He needs to unmute.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
there we go.
Okay, thanks. So the question was about home card and if we are seeing folks from other communities come into our library.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. It's a great benefit not only for our card holders, but also just for all of the libraries that do participate in home card. I think because I could actually pull a report to see how many checkouts are happening in our library in a fiscal year, from card holders of other libraries. I will say it's probably not a huge amount, but definitely, at least anecdotally, probably 2 or 3 times a week, we are getting patrons into the Winooski Library who have cards at other libraries to check out our materials.
Okay. Thank you.
Nice. Thanks, Nate.
Can I, kind of tied onto that, Nate, can I ask, this is something I've actually been wondering. So Winooski still has Hoopla.
Yes.
Fletcher Free is now part of the home card system, but does not have that resource. Would someone
Correct.
need to get a library card in Winooski to then access like that particular service?
Yes, so they would not be able to use their Fletcher Free card to access our Hoopla resource. They would be able to sign up for a non-resident card if their primary purpose was for the Hoopla collection. And that's partly why we increased the non-resident card fee this year that went into effect on July 1st. It had been $10 and we're now $35, and that should someone sign up for a non-resident card for the purpose of gaining access to Hoopla, that would kind of be a cost-neutral resource for us, having someone who's not paying taxes in Winooski access that collection.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other library questions before we venture on?
Are you going to get into the construction renovation timeline?
So as part of the sort of more towards the end of the presentation, just kind of future projects, we can talk. I have a
Okay.
bullet there, so we can talk
Cool.
about that more then.
Then
I don't have a
let's-
ton of like nitty gritty. I think we'll get more into that tomorrow at the commission meeting. I'm
Okay.
happy to talk a little bit about that down the road if that's okay.
Sure,
They're also coming to council on January 26th.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
great.
All right. So the reason we all came here tonight. So fiscal year 27 budget. So here's the roll up that you all get. As I mentioned, there was that big salary shift in the detail budget that sort of rolls up into these 10 lines. So, discuss that there. But want to talk a little bit about some of the more noticeable changes from fiscal year 26 to 27. Talk about the why, and then get into some high level sort of details of the budget, and then talk a little bit about the ads that we're proposing and some of the ads that we did not initially propose. So in looking at this budget, the places where obviously there's a significant increase, so salary and benefit, really more on the salary side, that's reflective of a couple things. One, the additional park staff person. The livable wage increase has a pretty significant disproportionate impact on our department. We have a lot of folks in that grade 2. And then otherwise, everything else is pretty much business as usual. As you'll see in a minute, we've got a lot of staff, which means a lot of salary, which means those natural escalators have a bigger dollar impact in our department. The specialized supplies, is that right? Yeah. Took a pretty big jump as well. The vast majority of that is actually in the pool chemical line. So I talked to Rauscher a little bit on that, who's on the call as well. And that budgeting was done based on actuals from the last 2 years. So I think there has been an increase in the price of chlorine for us at the pool. but it's also reflective of actual usage. So that 14,000 is a big number as a percentage of this budget, but it is reflective of what we've actually been using. So that is really what's driving the bulk of that increase there. Everything else is sort of, we're trying to get better at applying a cost of living escalator in some places to budget lines for, just to make sure we're not slipping behind year over year. The other place that I want to just call out, because again, not a huge number, but a big percentage, is in that miscellaneous line. So that is actually, by and large, the cost of credit card fees that we pay when folks transact with us via credit card. So what's great is that we're seeing more people pay with credit card. So that is awesome in that it helps us collect revenue, it helps us avoid delinquencies and people getting behind. And on the negative side comes along with a percentage. So as we're seeing more people pay with credit card, there is an increased cost that comes along with that. So
do we offer any discounts to pay with cash or check?
Angela's going to start throwing tomatoes. So I think it actually, especially I'm thinking of like a service location like the pool.
Yeah.
It's actually really from a controls perspective preferable for us to have folks paying with a card, because then we're not handling large amounts of cash. There's, it avoids counting errors at the end of the night. So I think that, could we? Yes. We would have to do some finagling of the ordinance because that is not captured within there.
Yeah.
But I think I would not be particularly inclined to do that given that sort of cash handling challenge.
Have you considered doing fees on credit card purchases?
Pass through?
Angela's got it.
We do charge the fees directly to the customer. The city is not fully bearing those costs. We are seeing it on the revenue side as well.
Yeah.
So this is the difference then?
No, that is the exact cost that we are paying for processing credit cards, but we are also receiving the comparable number in the revenue lines as well.
So it's offset?
So it's net. Yeah, net zero.
Yeah, it's completely offset.
Okay. All right.
I think the downside is it's an added cost to the customer.
Right.
So.
Angela, do you, how frequently do you review the, management systems to see if you can negotiate a lower handling fee?
So the handling fee is 3% right now for the Civic Rec system. It's standard in the contract, and that's actually pretty standard across the board. We have a 2.95% for our in-person credit card charges, and that was negotiated down.
Okay.
And they've been fixed since we entered into the contracts. The only escalation we've had was to our in-person credit cards for here at City Hall.
What's the timeline on how long that's fixed for?
We do not have an expiration on the contract, so it's fixed until we're notified that they're going to anticipate an increase, and then we can negotiate at that time.
Okay.
And I will say one challenge with Civic Rec that we ran up against initially, and why we have two separate credit card processing entities, is that they will only work with certain vendors in terms of how those products interface with their software.
Yeah.
So the first year we were open at the pool, we were using the same system that we had here, but what that meant is that every single transaction at the front desk of the pool was happening twice, because we had to charge the credit card, type all the info in there, take that, and then manually put it into Civic Rec. And so it was creating errors, it was creating time issues, the front desk was a mess. So by that extra, 0.5% of charge has really helped us streamline service at that front desk, which I think has been worth it.
Yeah.
And they're, given that you are the co-chair of the statewide organization, how many other municipalities use Civic Rec?
That is a good question. I know Burlington does. It's a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of Civic Rec, MyRec, Vermont Systems. Those are sort of the three big players. Amelia is another product that's kind of been growing in recent years. I will say I have done, not super recently, but within the last 5 years, sort of product demos with all 3 of those other vendors. And with all due respect, they're just different flavors of sort of not great.
Yeah.
And so I think every one of them has deficits and perks. And I think the nice thing about Civic is it's actually working really well for us at the pool.
Great.
And that is by far our biggest sort of in-person space. So it's certainly something where, every state conference, every national conference, like we're meeting with those vendors and hearing about product updates and definitely like keeping an ear to the street, but nothing has compelled me yet to feel like we got to jump.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is we now have 6 years of data that would just go poof if we ported over to a new system. So I think that would be a big loss.
Yeah.
So any other questions here, numbers wise, about changes? Again, everything else is fairly kind of business as usual, for lack of a way to say it.
This might be jumping ahead, but does any of this include necessary parks maintenance supplies?
So most of the parks maintenance funding is within the Public Works budget, and that, as we'll talk about in a little bit, has been, I don't want to say a pinch point, but it's definitely been sort of a negotiation point cross-departmentally. I think, John and Joe and Jason have been awesome to work with, but they are the ones that have the signatory authority over the budgetary lines for maintenance. So you saw that when they presented their budget a couple weeks ago. And then staffing wise, we don't have currently any dedicated parks maintenance staff. All the maintenance that's happening is either myself, Robin, and Maruna, or Public Works pulling somebody off of another job to come out and help us out. So those are sort of embedded within those other positions. They're not like teased out as a separate line item or person.
Thank you.
So a couple quick overview pieces of the budget. There's a lot going on here, so I'll just quickly describe what you're seeing. So the little pie chart in the lower right is the overall general fund budget. So that shows you the percentages for everybody in the general fund of what the breakdown is. And then the pie chart on the left is the community services budget. So as I mentioned earlier and sort of foreshadowed, our salary and benefits make up over 75% of our departmental budget. And that's, I think Elaine mentioned this in her presentation, like already we're a staff heavy organization. Our department is just even more so, I think is the point here. And I was really struck by this number last year when it was the first time I had seen it in my years here with the city. But that little chart up at the top is just number of hours worked in the fiscal year by the department. And I was pretty floored by this number. Considering we are not a 24/7 outfit, that is a lot of hours of human time that has gone into the work that we do. So I think just wanted to highlight that it's pretty good bang for the buck in terms of dollar per hour as you kind of cross those two charts. And then within the department, just to talk a little bit about the sort of relative breakdown, this may be a slightly imperfect number because again, I had to take that pooled staffing line and sort of manually pull it back apart and apply it to Thrive and apply it to Rec. And I'm fairly confident in my math, but it could be off by a percentage point or two. But it gives you a sense of the sort of breakdown of what we're looking at here across the department. So pretty even split for the most part, minus of course senior programs. I will say that number, when you factor in the cost of the building and all the operating costs that are in the Public Works budget for that, it does bring that percentage up to about 6% versus 4%, but still that's an area where we are underinvested at this time compared to the rest of the department. And just wanted to highlight too, and again, I think this is information you got in your initial budget outreach memo, but looking at what the community was kind of asking for through the survey process that Angela came up with and has been administering, pretty proud that we are being coveted, the work we're doing. Like, people like what we're doing, and that's great to see. But I think just as a comparative, wanted to show that relative to sort of the piece of the pie up top. And not with any agenda, but just as a, I think we're providing good service for the percentage that we are receiving at this time. And I think the community's telling us that's positive. So,
Note that that chart doesn't include revenue.
correct. All right. Any questions before I go forward?
So it looks like, forgive me if I've missed something.
No.
The presentation, dove into the pool and the library. I don't know that there was, did I miss content on the senior center or more on Thrive? Or?
Nope, no, and I'm happy to answer questions there. I think typically, in years past, I haven't necessarily done like a breakdown slide for each area.
Okay.
So again, like not for any particular reason. I'm happy to answer questions on either, but really more just, I think, trying to be mindful of time and
Got it.
focusing on some other areas. But I think in both cases, feeling good about what we're doing, again, relative to the investment. I think Senior Center is doing a lot of good work. We're limited, 28-hour position, who is also largely managing a facility. There's only so many hours then available for programming, so I think that's a limitation. And on the Thrive side, I'm really proud and pleased with the way that program has rebounded. I think as you all recall, we had a pretty rough summer 2 years ago, and I think I'm going to give Mr. Ray a pat on the back for covering last year and getting us stabilized. And then can't say enough about Evelyn. She is just an absolute rock star and has been doing things for that program that I was not ever going to be able to do because she's a lot more fun than me. But we're seeing, huge amount of interest in numbers, tons of positive feedback from the school. I think already, as you saw with the memo for the fees, are adding services. So the early release day and vacation camp services, she's been here on the ground since June, and we're already sort of expanding what we're doing, which is really cool.
I have 2 more questions.
Yeah, please.
There's been an evolution of partnership with the downtown Winooski events.
Yep.
Like, I don't know if you have anything else in here about how that has changed over time and.
No, but happy to speak to it. I think in terms of the sort of the Winooski Wednesday, which is now the the block party sort of model, that was the initiative we started through the city. I think kind of limped along and did with what we could, and downtown, under Meredith and now Melissa really stepped in as a partner, and I think saw an opportunity to take on more ownership and leadership and really grow it, which they have. So that's been fabulous, and I think we continue to work really closely with them. We did a Better Places grant in partnership with them last year to get some investments into the park, which has been huge.
Yeah.
We're continuing to work with them on the scheduling and the permitting side for events. I think they were really excited about the rink in Rotary Park, and Robin has been carrying the water on that, the frozen water as it were, but they're really excited to step in and help with volunteers, and I think about how we can program that moving forward. So I think it's been a really great partnership, something we're continuing to, I talk to Melissa every 2 weeks at the least, so we're very much working together on things.
And then before I forget my other question, 'cause I almost did. The senior center, you might get into it later on, but I believe our ground lease is up in 15 years, is that correct?
2043.
Okay, so not
That's
quite.
up, so we got some time.
Okay.
And we certainly are behind the scenes thinking about that and working on that. We've had some meetings with the new property owner. I've been working a little bit with Preservation Trust of Vermont to think about some different opportunities on that site more broadly, but nothing imminent. And I think there hasn't been a real indication of a pressurized timeline from the owner.
Okay.
So I think we're, in a lot of ways, I think holding tight until the new space at the O'Brien Center opens up.
Okay.
And I think that will potentially be a catalyst for some other conversations about how we're providing services and spaces.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah, just thinking time flies.
It does.
And sequencing of community input,
Yep.
scoping, planning,
Yep.
budgeting, securing funding, and all of
Yes.
that, like
Yep.
18 years will be up before we know it.
I know. And I think what I will say, and this is not something that I haven't said in a public space, I think we really want to look at that property as how can we get the highest and best value for the city as a whole out of the St. Stephen's parcel, not just the senior center, not just the church building. And so I think whatever that looks like, I think we're flexible and open to creative ideas, to thinking really differently about what's on that property. But again, there hasn't been like a real pressurized, like, you gotta go by this time, or
Okay.
we'll buy out your lease if you leave by this time. None of those conversations have been happening. It's more just,
Okay.
it's a big piece of land in a small community, and if there's a different way to use it to better effect, I think the city's open to that conversation.
Okay. Thanks, Ray.
Yeah, great questions.
I have one question which might actually tie directly into the livable wage. We've talked with some of the other departments, specifically fire and police, around hiring and retention. And I'm just wondering specifically around Thrive, because early child care is another area that is struggling with that, and just kind of how it feels.
Yep. So I'm gonna knock all the wood. We have been really fortunate from a retention perspective, both at Thrive and at the pool. And those are both areas where I think you would expect to see a lot of churn. I think last year we had like 85 to 90% of our pool staff returned from season to season, which is incredible. And Thrive staff, we have had a really stable group since the beginning of after school last year. So I'm feeling positive about that. I mean, I think there's a few things going on. I think one is we're paying well, I think, within the field. I think childcare overall has gotten a pretty nice shot in the arm financially from the changes that have happened with subsidy. So I am interested to see if that starts to trickle out to some other programs that start to be able to pay more, and does that put some pressure on us? I think we work in a really compelling community with really compelling kids, and I think that's not nothing. I think it is really special, and I can say this firsthand, to be up there and see this community and the way that it works and the way that these kids engage, and just how special that is. And so I do think that we have that going for us as well. But I also think it's nice that we have the continuity of after school to summer, back to after school, so we're able to really stitch together a full year opportunity versus more episodic. You're here for one program and done, here for one program and done. And that has been really helpful.
Great.
Cool. All right. So what's new? Again, talked about these at a very high level earlier, and Elaine gave a lot of these details. I, full disclosure, copied and pasted all of these bullet points from your presentation. But the livable wage increase, obviously, for step 2, is a big deal for our department. We have a lot of folks that fall within this band, and this increase is really meaningful for them. And I think back to your point, Aurora, about retention, I think this is really helpful for us as we look at that moving forward. I will say again, as mentioned here, disproportionately representative of our BIPOC employee group within this grade. And I think this is really, from an equity perspective, this is a no-brainer in my opinion. Like, this is not a lot of money, and I think really makes a big difference for the folks that it impacts. So I just wanted to reemphasize this. I know you already got the spiel in the first presentation, but again, just really does impact us pretty significantly. And I think, this photo in my mind really kind of says it all. Like, these staff do hard work and hold a lot of things, and I think, frankly, this is the least we could do.
So continuing that retention, acknowledging it with.
Yes. And then the other, big add for us this year would be the seasonal parks and trails manager position. So those numbers at the top, I just want to talk about quickly. So the actual cost of this ad is a little over $19,000. What you saw in the budget tool was an additional 12. Reason being that we currently have a contract for field maintenance at Landry to the tune of about $7,000. If this position doesn't happen, we still need to maintain the softball field. Right. And so that delta would be is being carried in the budget, the base budget, so that if this doesn't happen, we have a way to keep that field functional. So that's why that number is different here versus what you saw. And you know, again, I mentioned earlier, we really are in a situation where we are sharing resources, namely human resources, with Public Works at a time when both of us are trying to do all the things. You heard from John last week, and I know, having worked alongside these guys for a long time, like, as soon as it gets warm, everybody wants to do everything all at once. And I think we suffer from that as well. It's great, right? It's Vermont. Everybody goes into hibernation, and then like as soon as it's sunny, it's like, why aren't the fields mowed? And why isn't this happening? And why haven't you picked up this? And yeah, I'm sure you get it as well. So I think this is really an effort to kind of acknowledge that pinch point and that tension, and try to bring some resources into our department that we can manage in partnership with Public Works, but really try to take some of the load off their plate. Because I think, as you heard from John, there's things they're not getting to because of staff pressures. And, you know, when we're calling Joe and saying, hey, there's a tree dangling over the trail, like, they have to come out and help us with that.
Right.
And that's a safety issue, but then that means they're not, you know, doing pavement or doing sidewalk work or whatever. So I think there's that responsive element, but I also think just starting to think proactively, being able to do annual park quality assessments. This is something I've had on my whiteboard probably to a point now where I'm going to need like a chemical to get it off. It's been there for a long time. Just being able to do routine annual looks at our parks. How are they working? What's broken? How are customers interacting with the space? And there's some great tools nationally that we could use for this. Routine park visits. This is one, especially in the summer, that we get behind on because the pool is running, camp is running, all the things are happening, people are on vacation, and next thing you know, nobody's been to Memorial Park in 2 months on the staff side. And not because they're sitting around with their feet up, but it's just a busy time for us. So I think this would give us some kind of dedicated eyes and ears in those parks. You know, doing more visitor counts and visitor surveys, I think this is something I'd love to get a better sense of. I think, how are these parks working for people, and really being able to be out and asking those questions on the ground. Helping with coordination of the volunteer trail days. You know, I think, Bryn, I have your feedback noted, but those are areas where we're starting to see some interest and build some momentum, which is great. But when Robin's organizing a trail day, she's not running soccer, and she's not organizing basketball, and she's not at the pool. So I think that's a pinch point for us.
Coordinating volunteers is a lot.
It takes a lot of time.
Of work.
Yep, to do well.
Yeah.
So I think, as you can see here, and I'm sure there's more things that are not listed here on the proactive front, but I think some really exciting opportunities that we could lean into to make some improvements to our park system. This question came up a few times, so I wanted to just address it around like equipment, because we're not asking for any specific additional equipment. And I have talked to John. I think he's on here, so I don't want to speak for him. But you know, we feel confidently between the two of us that sharing equipment between the two departments is something we can kind of coordinate and negotiate. And if not, and there are things that we want to go out and buy or need, we do have some reserves and some operating dollars that we feel like we can access to do that. But we're not projecting a need for massive amounts of equipment. You know, it might be a push mower and a brush hog and a weed whacker, and like, those are things we feel at the time we can manage through the existing resources we have.
Quick question. There's a Friends of Winooski library group that is kind of recently reinvigorated.
Yes.
Has there ever been thoughts of a Friends of Winooski Parks group?
Yes, there has. And I think that this is I recently took it off, but this was another item on my whiteboard for quite some time. I think it is on the radar, and just has not climbed up the list.
Yeah.
So I think there's good examples and models. You know, Burlington is a pretty active group. So I do think there are some ways we could start to look at this moving forward. But I think candidly with parks, like, keeping the wheels on has been about the extent of our capacity. And so I think adding this is another place where, again, if Robin's not out fixing the outfield fence in Landry, she can be thinking about those more kind of back of house types initiatives of how we recruit volunteers and make a compelling case to the
and
community.
then also just thinking about another support group that can help secure tools or a tool budget or something along those lines.
Yep, no, that's a great point. That's a great spot to kind of deploy that type of support.
Yeah, and if we have that more volunteer coordinating with one person, that might help too. It'd be like, who are the consistent folks?
Yep.
Who is really passionate about this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then just a couple more data points I wanted to share here. So National Rec and Parks Association has a great data set that we're not currently engaging in, although if I can get my act together this month, we're going to add our data to for the second time. We first did it in 2019 and have had a gap. It's a pretty extensive survey, and it's just not been a high priority for us, but I'm hoping this month to get back. It's called Park Metrics. But, looking at comparatively across the country, and the group that we looked at was sort of jurisdictions, which is the term of the survey, under 20,000 people. Our 213 acres of parkland across 9 parks represents 911 residents per park. Said a different way, 25.9 acres per 1,000 residents. Those numbers are about twice the average nationally in that same kind of cohort. And I think the other piece that's a little harder for us to tease out to have apples to apples, but 46% of parks departments typically are committed to the operations and maintenance side of the work, and we have 0. Other than, again, what we can pull out of existing staff that really are supposed to be doing more or less other things. The other number that I thought was interesting was nationally, 38% of department budgets are dedicated to parks. And that's for the whole cohort of folks reporting. For the smaller jurisdictions, it's about 34%. And again, our percentage of budget is far below that in terms of what we're actually putting into the park. So all that to say, we've been, I think, historically fairly under-resourced in this area, which is why it felt like, we need to really get this on the radar for council and have this part of a conversation. And then I share this trail number. Love our parks, love our trails. Right now, 3.2 miles of trails officially. But I think if you look at Landry Park and some other places around the city where there are kind of less formalized park networks, I think with a little bit of juice from some staff time, those could come up into our system in a more formal way, and I think get us more close to that median number of 4 miles per community, which would be fabulous. All right. Any questions on this so far? All right, we're almost there, I promise. So I think certainly been hearing, and I think always want to make sure to highlight what we didn't put in the strategic investment budget. But I think are important to note are things that would be helpful and valuable. So this one's been on here for, I think, Barb and I were trying to figure out, it's been 8 or 9 years that this has been on the sort of the ad list that I bring forward when we do budget building, and it hasn't made it to the finish line of coming to the council table, but increasing that position from part to full time. What I would want to say there is I think as much as there would definitely be an emphasis on senior programming, I think it would also open up some opportunities for more broad adult programming, which right now, Robin and Maruna are admittedly pretty youth focused. We're pretty heavy on the youth side. And by intent, that's not an accident, but I think that we miss a pretty big swath of our community with programming. So that's an item that is not currently in, but is in the budget tool. Scholarship funding, again, I mentioned our approach earlier. I feel pretty good about that versus saying, here's 40 grand. I think that's almost a more limiting approach, but I think it is on the budget add tool, so wanted to acknowledge it. 2 items that I'm sort of foreshadowing as a potential ask for next year as we think about moving eventually into a new expanded library space. So I mentioned earlier about a 64% increase in linear shelf space. That's great, not so swell if you don't have books to put on the shelves. And so this increase is reflective of a comparable percentage increase to the physical material line, which is only a portion of our books, periodicals line in the budget. A little more than half of that goes towards our digital stuff.
Are there grants available through the state to help support that?
Or
other third-party groups?
Yeah, that's a good question. Nate, I'm not familiar with like materials related grants per se, but Nate, feel free to chime in if there are things.
Yeah, I mean, generally, same, right? A lot of the grants support programming needs,
right.
Or capital improvements, and there tends to be fewer grants that would assist with purchasing materials or tables or bookshelves, you know, that type of stuff.
Okay.
I did notice that the American Library Association had a grant specifically for graphic novels that seems to be yearly. So I don't know if even they might have some additional stuff.
Yeah, I think that was the Eisner grant, maybe.
Yeah.
For about $5,000. And yeah, certainly something that we could apply for. It's always been on the back burner just because there would be nowhere to put the books.
Yeah.
In our current space, but definitely something to look at going forward.
Awesome.
And then from a staffing perspective, you know, looking at the possibility of moving one of our part-time library clerks to a full-time position, just to add some capacity and some depth. I think, you know, we cobbled together a staff schedule, and I think Nate spends time at the front desk and Kirsten spends time at the front desk. And if Donna's out, Amanda slides over from our office to help cover the front desk. But I think if we could start to be a little more stabilized up front and with those more basic library functions, I think that would really help open up some opportunities, like looking at grants, thinking about collection development, thinking about programming. So as we move into a bigger space, kind of anticipate more usage, it's something that we wanted to just flag as a future potential need. A couple more things that were on that list. So you heard earlier from Nick and Lauren, Park District, you know, full payment. I will say certainly they're a huge partner for us, have been really a group we rely on. Lauren was instrumental in helping us get our Parks and Open Space plan done. She was one of really the key contributors to that. So that's, I think, something I'm pleased that we're continuing to make progress, but want to flag as I think something that would be great. The nonprofit support is not really our department's, but is adjacent to our department. So I'm putting it here because I don't think anybody else had talked about it. Quick visit to the Wayback Machine, but when I started, there was 40 grand that was in the general fund that every year 2 counselors and me, I don't know who was doing it before me, would get together and decide how we were going to divvy out.
Excuse me.
Which is great and lovely. I think that having been a nonprofit director in my previous job to here, the $2,000 or $3,000 that we were scattering to the wind across Chittenden County was lovely, and I don't think necessarily making significant impact. So I think if we were to go this route, I would want to be really thoughtful about how that's getting divvied out and think about impact, again, of maybe a bigger chunk less frequently versus you get a little bit and you get a little bit and you get a little bit. And then 2 final pieces here, additional capital support for parks. So this is something that we've started to make some progress on, which is great. We had $10,000 included in last year's capital budget. Again, proposed that for this year. Prior to those 2 years, there had not been sort of non-project specific capital committed to parks. And where that becomes challenging, and I think as you saw in the consent agenda, a lot of these grants that we're looking at for trail improvements, facility improvements require match. And we just don't have extra capital per se lying around. So I think starting to seed this and think about, you know, the Buildings and General Services grant, $11,000 of our investment turned into almost $23,000 of actual revenue between the grant and our commitment. So that's very much my vision of that, is thinking about how we can source or seed some money to then turn $1 into $2 or more, looking at leveraging that against outside opportunities. And for context, again, back to that National Rec and Parks data set, for communities of our size, looking at a 5-year annual capital budget, the annual allocation in that 20,000 or less jurisdiction was about $442,000 annually. Our current allocation between the debt on the pool and the $10,000 is about $250, and about $240 of that is debt on the pool. So, you know, we're about half of what our peer agencies are receiving. And I say that also understanding fully the context that our capital budget as a whole is really stretched. And so I'm sharing that as context. not with an agenda. I just think it's important for us to understand sort of the comparative. And I think John has done a fabulous job, Angela as well, of making that scant capital budget into something, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that parks are part of that underinvestment, not just pipes and pavement. And then I think too, Thomas, I'm following your lead because you've been sort of nudging us throughout to say, like, is this really everything? I mean, candidly, I think for that parks position to be full-time year-round would be fantastic, and I think would allow us to then engage that person on some of the planning and pre-planning and sort of, again, some of the back-of-house stuff that happens at this time of year when it's too cold to do anything outside, to help us be set up for the summer months in a more intentional way. But again, that was not pushed for as an ad, but I think in the spirit of that question, I wanted to put it here as well.
Right, I appreciate that, and and Bren, I saw that you have a question, so I'll try to be brief, but I do want to remind council about the commitment that we made to ourselves going into this, and one, asking to see everything, but that, I believe, is because we want to see what we can fund as well. So just because Ray hasn't added something on the included list, I don't think it means that we are not allowed to fund that. And I know that we're going to get into these conversations much in a couple of weeks, but I guess I'll take my prerogative as mayor. The senior center director is something that is very important to me this year. Ray, you said 8 years you've been coming
8 or 9, I
to
think
the
this has been
council,
on the list.
slightly suggesting that it should become full-time, but never fully asking for that. The work that Barb, who is our senior center director, does on a part-time basis, I can only imagine all the things she'd be able to do if she was full-time. Did a quick census search. Winooski is 84% folks who are over the age of 18, yet we have 4% of this budget is allocated to senior center funding. So there seems to be a little bit of a lopsidedness there that has been recognized, right? I mean, like, you've brought this to us consistently. So I'd really like us all to think about this particular position, along with all of the many other things we have to think about. Personally, I believe we have asked the senior center many, many years, we'll get you next year, we'll get you next year, and that next year never comes. My hope is that this year may be the year that we actually do that. With that, I digress.
To tack on really quick, I'm also, in the back of my mind, something that we brought in, not necessarily to this budget, but several of our past budgets, was thinking about the feedback we got around spending down COVID funds. And one of the biggest feedback we got was around folks feeling disconnected and adults looking for programming.
Yes.
So that is, and just to add, in addition to what you said, Thomas, that's in the back of my mind too, of we have data to back some of that, like that need up.
Thank you. Brenna, you had a question.
Yep. You don't have anything about funding an art budget on here.
I do not. That is true. And I think, quick context for others, we do have a small Deke Chicaro art fund, which was seeded when Deke left the city manager role, seeded up front with $5,000. We have not to date added to that. I guess I'll say truthfully, public art is a funny one in that it kind of falls between departments, and I don't always necessarily think of it as like ours to hold and carry, which is, I think, candidly why that's not here. I'm all for it. I think it's important, but I don't know that any of us really.
Probably wouldn't fall under infrastructure commission though.
Well,
Maybe.
yeah,
Paint it on the wall.
but I think there's a zoning
Safe, healthy,
component. There's
connected,
a,
though.
yeah,
Who's
there's.
designing it?
So anyway, I think it's a valid point, and perhaps a miss on our part, but I wouldn't say it's a bad investment. I think that would be put to good use, but.
Maybe we'll have a better sense, because we are putting together that group to
Yes.
figure out
Yes.
kind of a policy around public art. So
That's what I'm asking.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me, to that point, I think there's a little bit of like chicken and egg for me in my mind of like, let's get the policy piece first and figure out how this is gonna work before we start asking for the resources to do it. And I could understand the flip side of that coin too, of like, let's have something to do the plan with once the plan is developed.
Yeah, I guess I've seen it both ways. With my existential struggle with a traffic calming manual, let's have something and then we'll fund it. Well, we have had something for 3, closing in on 4 years, and we haven't really funded it. So I get concerned where it's like, we, like cart, horse, chicken, egg, however you want to frame it. Like, we're not going to fund it until we have a plan. And it's like, well, we have a plan, but we're still not going to fund it. So just relaying some of my frustration as it relates to some other things that we've had some different strategies around.
Sure, no, that is fair. And I will say I can't speak to traffic calming because
I
that
know
is
you
mercifully
can't.
not my department.
Lucky you, right? Lucky you.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I think the parks plan is another example where we went out and built a plan without resources to implement that plan. And we did that intentionally because in my mind, I was like, it's better to have a plan and no money than no plan and no money. And we've been chipping away at that, but it's slow progress.
Yeah, and I believe that we've also hurt ourselves in having some moderate plans or modest plans for how we've gone about some spending in the recent past. And we've learned the hard way that we've needed to pause because it wasn't as well structured as we thought it was initially. So, you know, it takes a lot of work and a lot of conversations to do it well. So I'm thrilled that there is some dedicated discussion on the near horizon to pay attention to that, because if I were to have something that I would love to walk away from, like Winooski and just being really, really pumped and jazzed about, I think having like a really thriving arts community and something that enhances and, you know, just builds on itself as far as our economic vitality, infrastructure improvements, like, I think that's one element that's just like, that would tie it all together.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
And I think, I will say the not putting it here is not a statement about its lack of value. It's just, again, I think
Just
an item
checking
that
in.
sort of falls between functions a little bit.
Okay.
So, good question. All right.
I'm gonna swing back to senior center just for a second. Is that figure just capturing salary and benefits, or would that also include any increase of supplies, utilities?
No, so that's just salary and benefits for that position. So that would be taking what is currently a 28-hour position up to 40 plus the benefits. So that's what that number contributes to. So I think likely that would come along with an eventual need for some increased resources. I will say that, and we'll get to this slide in a minute, there are some reserves available that we could, on an interim basis, tap into to kind of bridge that gap if we needed to. Little bit, not impossible, but a little bit tricky to speculate on, like, okay, so now with those extra 12 hours, are we just applying a percentage escalator to the supply lines? I'd want to be a little more intentional about what we're asking for, and since this was not essentially across the finish line, didn't do that work, but could.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Ray, before we move into the money section,
Yes.
all the dollar signs, I'm just going to see if there's any public comment. You have, if you'll come up to the table.
Sorry, Judy.
We all know you, but the people on Zoom may not.
As usual, I have a terrible time hearing you folks. I can hear from this side of the room, and when somebody's on Zoom, I hear out of the speakers in the back. But I would like to see a little money put into this sound system. Attending a meeting can hear, I mean, I hear you, but I cannot understand. It's all muffled.
Oh.
And if there's any way that your speakers could feed to the your microphones could feed to the speakers in the back, I think it would improve the matters a lot.
We might just not be talking close enough.
But that's not my main point. I'm a little confused. Increasing the senior center to full-time would cost $37,000. but increasing a part-time library clerk to full-time would cost $77,000?
Yep, so a couple reasons for that. With a new position, which essentially that part-time library clerk would be, we always budget for a family plan of health insurance. Because we have an existing staff member in the senior center position, we know that that would not be the case. And also it's going from 28 to 40 hours versus 12 to 40 hours. So the current library clerk is only 12 hours.
Oh, okay.
So there's a bigger jump in terms of
Okay.
the hours, which is why that's more
Okay,
expensive.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
good question.
All right, thanks. Now, I do, another point that I think about is when we get this new library, there are gonna be expenses, as Nate mentioned, you know, bookshelves and, I don't know, hopefully more computers and this and that and the other
Mhm.
thing, and I'm sure there's fundraising that will be worked on. But you can bet we're gonna have to spend some public money, tax money, to fit this place up, and furniture and whatever. And I just hope the thought is being put into that now, and I'd like to have that be made public sooner rather than later.
Yep. So a couple things to say there, and Angela, you can maybe give me the number details, but we do have funds at the moment that we have set aside and are sort of slowly growing to deal with that. So once the building opens, the tables, the chairs, the shelving, some of the fit up costs. And Angela, do you have that number handy?
So we have a few different pots of money that could potentially be tapped for fit up of the space. We have some capital money that's been set aside. We have about $209,000 in there. And then we've had some money that's been contributed directly to the library that is for last resort, since it's so open in terms of its use. But right now the library has about $13,000 of its own money, and we have $38,000 worth of general community services reserves.
Okay.
So there's a decent starting point. I think that's not going to get it all the way there, but I think it's a start. And knowing that we're not going to be in that new space realistically probably for 18 months, we've got some time. The other thing from a fundraising perspective, just to say a word on that, Elaine and I in particular, are working very closely with Champlain Housing Trust on a fundraising committee that's been meeting now for a number of months. I have my own feelings about this, which probably align somewhat to yours about being more public. But the sort of rule of thumb with a major campaign like this is that you try to get 80% of the way there quietly and use the public to take the final 20% to the finish line. So we are still very much in the 80% part of the work happening sort of behind the scenes. So that's individual meetings with potential philanthropists, wealthy community members, really trying to do that work behind the scenes before there's a really broad public campaign. And that's, again, I don't know, that's part of the sort of thinking around fundraising, I guess.
Okay. I understand that, and I think that's, you know, it seems to be proved. But just the fact that there will be expenses.
Yes,
I
yes.
think it would be good for the public to start thinking about that,
Mhm.
knowing. So it's not sprung on people, oh,
Yeah.
we thought this was gonna be like a turnkey operation here.
Yeah, I think one thing that's a little tricky for us too, like this operating budget will take us through June 30th next year. I don't think we're yet gonna be in that space when the next fiscal year turns over. And so I think that those types of expenses, you'll hear when I'm back here next January for the following year.
Okay.
Because the other thing is that we don't have any place to put stuff in the interim. So if we got an operating, you know, that's why I'm foreshadowing these for next year. Because if we got $6,000 more of book budget, I have nowhere to put those books between now and the new space opening up.
Fortunately, there are options for people to get e-books or books.
Yes,
home
yes.
sales, yeah, whatever. And I want to put a plug in. Thomas was mentioning, doesn't mean just because this is on the not ask for list for this year, doesn't mean you can't fund something. And I participate in the senior center with this bone builder exercise program that we meet twice a week. It's totally taught by volunteers. There's no cost to the senior center except maybe a little bit of the lights on. And we take good care of the building for sure. We now have anywhere between 18 and 23 people coming every
Nice.
time. And I'm telling you, it has been a lifesaver for a while.
Yep.
I see connections that have been made, and people just, it gets everybody out. It's unbelievable what it's
Yeah.
done for people. And I'd like to see more programs there for people who aren't necessarily my age, you know, younger people, younger adults,
Mhm.
maybe young retirees or people who aren't retired yet. Adult programs, I think, would be helpful.
Yep.
Like a CPR class, I think would be invaluable.
Yep.
That's it, thanks.
Thanks,
you.
Judy.
Thank you.
It's always great to hear about phone builders. I hear so many good things about it. And I got a little message from Paul. I will just remind counselors to talk a little closer to our microphone. Is there any public comment on Zoom? All right, thank you for that pause, Ray.
All right, a couple more things. Sorry, I know this is a lot of information. Always like to just make sure to highlight this, but you know, as a department, we really do make an effort to find opportunities to bring revenue in outside of the tax base to offset some of the costs. So this budget includes just shy of $350,000 in projected revenue, and taking the library out of that pie, because libraries don't really have a way to make money per se. That's kind of the point. That represents about 30% of the operating costs of the budget outside the library. So I think just a way to say we are working to try to keep our impact to the tax rate down. And then grant-wise, I will say last fiscal year was a little bit lighter than the year before, but already this year we are looking at a number of different grant opportunities. So I think this chart will look a little bit more robust next year, but these are some, and these numbers are not included in that 350 per se. All right. And then I've mentioned this a few times throughout, but just want to kind of put this slide up for folks to see. This is our departmental reserves. Most of this is the result of when I started with the city, most of our operating budget existed outside the general fund as what were called special revenue funds. Thinking behind those is that they were supposed to be self-sustaining, which was cute and not working. So thankfully, Jesse, our former city manager, was really supportive and talked to me about bringing those numbers into the general fund as a way to kind of stabilize the operation. So the only budget, which you will hear about in a minute, that still exists outside the general fund for us is the community gardens budget. But these are the reserves that we have on hand now. And again, I mentioned earlier, I'm really sitting on these intentionally because I feel like at this moment in this climate, things can change on a dime. And if suddenly school meals go away and I've now got to feed 40 kids a snack every day after school that we've been getting through the school district, I need some nest egg here to be able to fall back to. So that's why we're kind of intentionally holding on to this for the time being.
And this is all cash on hand?
I mean, yes, yeah. Yeah, so this is money we have.
Just to clarify the difference, cash on hand being available to utilize at any moment versus things that are in a CD or...
Yeah, Angela can answer that. I know we've been strategically investing different pots of money to take advantage of interest rates. But I think generally, given the overall picture, we're liquid enough that we can get to the funds as we need them. I don't know if Angela, that more or less answers your
That's an
question.
accurate statement. They are technically invested in the CDs, but because of the balances, we would be able to access this level of cash routinely.
Got it.
And Ray, I'm assuming that the different line items doesn't really matter if you needed to pull it. Like if you needed money for senior center meals, you could pull it out of Operation Bloom if that's where all the money was left.
So for my personal safety, I'm going to answer this in two different ways. So Operation Bloom, I would say, is a very discrete line that I think is kind of its
I just
own.
said a random line. It could be
Yeah, I
random.
know. So the senior center, joking aside, when we started, the senior center had an existing budget that was very much theirs, that seniors had worked through bingo and other programs to kind of pull together. So I've been very, very much viewing that as its own chunk of change that is only going to be invested in senior programming. From a very technical perspective, this is all pretty much available across the department, but I think out of deference and respect to that effort and the history of that money, trying to hold that.
I do track the individual balances. Some of these monies were specifically donated with restrictions. The library in particular has a life insurance bequest that is included in that number, and all Operation Bloom monies were donated specifically for the Winooski Gardening Group, so they are not available for general use, they are available only for those specific purposes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Is it possible to just add a footnote to the slide so indicate what's restricted and what might not be?
So in the reserve tracking sheet that's usually presented to council that includes Fund 400, all of those budgets are reported as assigned. So these are generally not available for any other purpose other than community services.
Yeah,
There's
I
a lot of
guess,
different pots of money in
I'm-
there.
Excuse me.
I'm just thinking for the general public that's reviewing this and thinking like, could you move this around, or
Right.
is it restricted allocations?
Yeah, I can work with Angela to think about how we can present that
Yeah.
in a way to indicate that.
I think in general, we're gonna recommend that they stay in the buckets that they're in for the most, they're for the
Yeah,
particular purpose.
I think it's just adding a footnote that says that.
Yep, fair enough. Yep. All right. Done a lot of foreshadowing of this very exciting budget. I'm really hopeful we don't talk about it for all that long, but community gardens, money in, money out for the most part. Our process has been generally building up a slight reserve over a few years and then investing that back into the gardens.
Yep.
So pretty unremarkable. One thing I will note for the gardens this year is that the roughly 60 some odd plots at the O'Brien Center are not going to open there for this growing season because of the construction. So Robin and I have been working Robin mostly, very actively on trying to find different nooks and crannies to put those 60 plots. And I think based on some mapping, we have accomplished that. We just need DigSafe to come out and confirm. But I think we feel pretty comfortable we're going to get the vast majority of those relocated for the spring, which is great.
Have
That's
you-
good, 'cause people love those gardens.
They do.
Yeah.
And which is what I was gonna say is, have you talked to because I know that you tend to go back to the people that have had reservations before.
Yeah.
Like right of first refusal, have you
So
notified them?
So we did notify gardeners at O'Brien Center in the fall that they needed to get
Okay.
materials out because of this change, and we have not yet opened garden registration for this growing season. And when we do, we'll definitely be adding those different plot sites and numbers and kind of communicating that.
Okay,
And
so you haven't let that group know where the future temporary
yet.
site will
Not
be,
yet.
or future permanent site will be?
Right, not yet.
Okay.
Right, is there any partnership between the plots and the programming at the greenhouse?
Not at the moment. I think that is on a future work plan for us. And they took on some plots at Landry to do some like teaching garden stuff, but not beyond that.
Yeah, okay.
And I think their model is not necessarily to run a community garden
Okay.
necessarily. They're really using that greenhouse as an educational space, a programming space. So I think it would be a bit of a departure from their mission to suddenly be like,
Yeah, I was just thinking of some of the programming that I saw. Some of it was so interesting, and maybe not what like the average gardener knows. so.
Yep. We're definitely promoting those opportunities to the gardeners very actively. So that's one
That's
thing
great.
we are trying to like connect those dots.
That's perfect.
If everything goes according to plan, is this intended to just be a one-year pause?
One or
at the
two,
O'Brien?
depending on the construction cycle, yes. And
Okay.
then the hope would be most of those would come back to the O'Brien Center. And we'll see, maybe these new sites will be really popular and it'll allow us to sort of grow the garden program.
Okay.
Which would be
Yeah,
cool.
that was my other thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we expanding? Thank you.
All right, we're almost there. So goals and initiatives for this year looking forward. This is not everything, I will say that up front, but I think some high points that I wanted to pull out of just sort of big things that we're working on. So I did not forget the question earlier about the O'Brien Center and the library and timing. So we are anticipating at this point that the Wednesday after Town Meeting Day, the current library and our current offices will cease operations in that location and be shut down for roughly 6 weeks and be relocating during that time to 65 Winooski Falls Way, the old commodities space. And the goal is to be open by no later than the beginning of the April vacation at school. So that gives us about a 6-week window in between the end of February break and the beginning of April break to relocate and get ready to reopen in that new space. So Paul and I are going to be working on communication around that in the coming weeks. We've been working as a team a lot behind the scenes. The lease on that space just started January 1, so I'm getting a key tomorrow, so we can start to go over and kind of eyeball measurements. CHT has some fit up to do. So there's some things that need to happen before we're ready to start moving books in, but we've got a layout, we've got a design. CHT has a construction plan. They've been doing the permitting work. So things are happening. The lease is in hand for January 1, so we're on the move as of March. I think it's 5th, 4th, whatever that Wednesday is. 5th. And still, I think some question marks about construction start time. I think late summer, and the holdup right now is on the financing side. I mentioned earlier the fundraising. It's perhaps unsurprisingly not a great time to be trying to fundraise. Philanthropic community has really gotten hammered in response to a lot of federal changes, and it's tighter than it normally is. So I think that's been slower to get going. If anyone knows anybody that wants to donate $1 million, please send them our way. But I think we're still forging on. I think permits are in hand for the project, which is awesome. That's a huge step. And we have a meeting tomorrow to review the plan that we have so far with the library committee and Safe Healthy. A lot of work happening behind the scenes there. So things are moving, but just slower than we'd hoped. And again, the financing is really the bottleneck right now. I don't know if that answers a timing question that came up earlier.
Yeah, to the extent that you
That I
know.
can, yeah. And I think 18-month construction window-ish is what we're
And what about,
holding.
will there be displacement of the current tenants?
Good question. So plan is that UVM Medical, community health centers, the dental clinic, and Vermont Works for Women will all remain active during the construction.
Okay.
There may be some periods of time where they have to shut down for a day here and there, but they're really going to try to make sure that those functions stay functional. There will be a period of time with the health center because they're doing a pretty significant expansion where their services may be impacted, but I believe their plan is to shift things to Burlington on Riverside, so it's not a huge travel distance for folks from A to B.
And so CHT owns the building now that?
Not yet. Still working through the environmental pieces, so.
Will that happen before construction starts?
Yes. Yep. So that's a critical path step that we are still working actively with them on. And it's just taking time, the permitting and the review at the state level.
Because the question I was gonna ask is, I was assuming they're gonna GM the project.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if you know off the top of your head. I almost want to say that they have plans to bid that.
Okay. We don't know if they have a general manager or consultant working on.
They're coming pretty soon, so
Okay.
if you could wait until then.
Clearly, he's definitely hit something there. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, totally.
You said they'll be here on the 26th?
26.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will wait.
Down.
A couple other quick ones. So Tom's long overdue pavilion is slated to go up at Landry. We were hoping to get it up this fall, and then the winter decided to happen in December, which hasn't happened in years. So we're looking at springtime to get that finished up, but excited about that.
That's great.
So I got the grant, which is really cool.
That's great.
Tom
Thank
was
you.
really excited about the grant.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Looking at another grant, as you saw, for some trail improvement work at Gilbrook on the design side, in hopes that we can then shop that in future years for funding for actual build out. But that would be potentially boardwalk, but minimally trail stabilization to get from the parking area to the trail network.
Yeah.
Right now, those trails along the reservoir are
That's
sketchy
Treacherous.
and certainly not accessible.
No.
Final design work on West Allen Park. So Robin and I have been working with a playground vendor on some initial design work there over the last couple months. So that's happening again, a little bit behind the scenes right now, but things are moving. As you all heard a lot about, horseback riding permit is on the work plan for the next year. Continued growth of volunteerism, continued work with Park District, as you heard about earlier, and then mentioned Evelyn and her great work. We are looking at a goal of a 3rd star for Thrive by the end of next fiscal year.
Awesome.
She has already submitted an application for a 2nd star, and indications, knocking the wood, indications are that we may exceed that and be able to move to a 3rd star very soon.
Okay.
Nice.
But we'll see once the determination comes back, but
Okay.
pretty confident in that 2nd star at this point.
Yeah.
So that's it. I want to say it's a complicated puzzle that we put together, and really cannot say enough how much we love what we do and appreciate the support that we have had over the years. So with that, I'm going to zip it.
Thank you very much, Ray.
Thank you, Ray.
A lot of very good info. You deserve some tea now or something. All right, let me pull this back up. We will now move on to our last item of the night.
Any questions?
Oh, I should ask for more questions. Any further questions on that?
You usually give people a break.
Judy, you hang around, I'll tell you a little secret about those breaks.
Judy, come here.
Would anybody like a break now that it has very openly been brought up?
I'm okay.
Okay. Oh, let me see. I don't see any hands online. I always appreciate Judy's advocacy. All right. So our last item of the night, goals, updates, municipal infrastructure, housing, safe, healthy, connected people. Ray, I'm sorry, Ray, you've got more talking to do. You can't have that tea yet. And Jasmine Hurley, Housing Initiative Director, and John Rauscher, Public Works Director.
We'll have Ray go first.
Okay.
So I can get out
I don't know if they're just gonna line up.
Hold on. So, yeah, I think I am embarrassed to say I was realizing I think some of my edits carried forward from the last report of last year and did not carry forward. I think you heard in that 26-27 kind of arc things that we're working on again. West Allen Park work, I think I wanted to make sure folks knew was happening. O'Brien Center has been taking a lot of time behind the scenes, so I think those are two pretty significant ones, but pleased with the work we're making on the Parks Plan, pleased with the work we're making on O'Brien Center. It's not in a public eye yet, but I think will be soon.
Okay. And the fire chief is also here if you have any questions about those updates in the Safe, Healthy, Connected People memo.
Okay.
Thanks.
If not, we can go on to municipal infrastructure.
I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
Evening, everyone. Evening,
John.
everyone. I hit most of you all with infrastructure items last budget presentation, so I'm not going to go too in depth, but happy to answer any questions.
Sean, I think you're also off the hook.
All right, Jasmine, go ahead.
Jasmine.
All right, there you go. Where'd you sit here? You don't have to. We can.
All right, I'll be a little longer than that, but I'll still be short. Okay, so it's been a little while since the last housing update. Everything on the priority list is mostly proceeding as planned. The equitable housing needs assessment is proceeding as planned, but a little bit slower than expected. And then same goes for the airport noise mitigation program, which I'm sure will continue to be yellow for the future. And then plans review is started but not proceeding well. So that will also probably continue to be read for a little while. I will just pick a few to briefly highlight. So for the equitable housing needs assessment, so we are now finally moving into phase 2 of the project. For reference, phase 1 and 1.5 have been completed. And so we're currently finalizing contracts with UVM and beginning to assemble the project advisory committee. We will be preparing for stakeholder interviews this spring and then focusing on the focus groups for the primary data collection over the summer months. And then the fall will kind of be spent by UVM analyzing all of the data and then drafting the policy recommendations and final reporting. So exciting to finally be getting to this point. For the Armory, we continue to work on that project. It's currently before the Development Review Board for a review of compliance with applicable zoning and land use regulations. The phase 2 environmental testing is now complete, and the final report is currently under review by the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. The report recommends that a corrective action plan be prepared to outline a soil management plan for the site. The drafting and review and approval of this plan will take about 3 to 4 months. So this is actually now outdated, but the city and the National Guard extended our current purchase and sale agreement to May 29th, 2026. And we should have the option agreement addendum signed as well with CHT within the next couple of days. So that is great. Let's see. And then I will just briefly touch on short-term rentals. So we continue to work on compliance. So now we only have about 6 units that are not in full compliance, which is the lowest number we've ever had. So I will probably start another round of auditing again to get that number back up. So we currently have 16 owner-occupied licenses for short-term rentals, and then we have 44 active or pending non-owner occupied licenses. So the number remains about 6 units below the 50 cap that that you set last year. Yeah, so the applications have definitely slowed since the cap, which is great. We haven't had to implement the cap, which it's good news for the clerk staff. And definitely good to see the pace of those new units popping up slow down quite a bit. I will note that since 2024, so essentially since this program started, we have had 18 units that have rescinded their licenses. And this is the chart that I think it's also in the budget book. But I figured I would include it here, and it shows the reasons that property owners rescinded their short-term rental licenses whenever they would notify me of either like stopping the process or not renewing their license. I would ask why, and I got an answer from everyone except for one. So 14 of them said that they were converting back to long-term rental units. 3 of them sold, so that also has the possibility of adding back to long-term rental or just long-term housing stock if an owner-occupied person buys the unit, and then 1 is unknown. So it actually shows that I think the program has the high license fee has potentially contributed to incentivizing long-term renting. As a more attractive option potentially. Because quite a few of the owners seem to go back and forth between and have now decided to go back to long-term rental. So, but I'm happy to answer questions for any of the items.
That's fantastic to hear. Thank you, Jasmine. And I think the work that council did to enable Jasmine to be able to do all of that work I heard that some legislatures are looking at our model and hoping to apply it statewide, so that's really nice to hear. I just wanted to give a little just cause eviction update, no update, but Chloe believes, who is one of our representatives, that there's a movement with some of the members in Montpelier to do just cause eviction statewide. So she has the belief that our just cause eviction will not move off of the wall and be discussed because of that. However, Burlington is investing time and also lobbying dollars in trying to get their just cause eviction off of the wall and discussed. If that were to happen, I would imagine that ours would also come off of the wall. So some progress in some ways there.
Yeah.
For the work that we did and folks voted on. Any questions for Jasmine?
The decision from DRB is due this month, is that correct?
Yeah.
45 days?
It's February 2nd.
February, yeah.
Okay. Great. That was my question.
And just to say, Jasmine it makes sense that she gets to report out for longer because she doesn't have a budget to explain. This is her chance.
This is your moment. Anything else? All right, Jasmine, thank you so much.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you.
I know this is word for discussion approval, but we just discussed.
Oh, sorry,
so
yes, just.
we're going to move to adjourn then. Oh, wait, any public comment on any of those items? In person or online? If you're online, just raise your hand. All right, seeing nothing, I will ask for a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you to staff.
Thank you.